We've grown up in a world that has fed us a lie. It's a lie so subtle, so persuasive, that most of us have accepted it without question. We've absorbed it through movies, through our upbringing, through locker room conversations and corporate boardrooms. The lie is this: strength means not showing emotion. It means staying silent in pain, appearing composed in crisis, being untouched by sorrow or doubt. Strength, as it's been sold to us, is the absence of vulnerability. But that is not strength. That's a mask, a myth. We've confused emotional suppression with emotional power. And let me tell you something clearly. There is no power in hiding. There is no courage in pretending. But this world will applaud you for it. People will cheer you on when you keep your head up while your heart's breaking. They'll say, "You're so strong," when you're dying inside but still showing up with a smile. They'll admire your silence, not knowing that it's not peace keeping you quiet. It's fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being seen, fear of looking weak. And over time, you learn to believe that being untouched, unshaken is strength. So you bury your feelings deeper. You convince yourself that to cry is childish, that to struggle is shameful, that to need help is to fail. And before long, you forget what it even means to feel. But what happens when the storm finally hits you? What happens when your life breaks in half and the armor you've built starts to crack? What happens when the death, the betrayal, the disappointment, the anxiety finally come to your doorstep? You find out very quickly that the mask of strength cannot save you. It was never meant to, and worse, it keeps you isolated in your moment of greatest need. People walk around emotionally bankrupt because they've built their entire lives on this myth. They've become experts at pretending. They're praised for their composure, admired for their grit. But inside, there's a child who never learned to process pain, a teenager who never healed from rejection, an adult who's still running from their own reflection. And the tragedy is, many never realize it. They go their whole lives thinking that if they can just hold it all together a little longer, if they can just be stronger, more independent, less emotional, they'll finally find peace. But peace doesn't come from pretending things are okay. It comes from facing them, even when they're not. Emotional strength isn't about bottling things up until you explode. It's not about putting on a show for the world while quietly falling apart behind closed doors. That's not strong. That's unsustainable. Emotional strength is honesty. It's the ability to look at the darkest parts of yourself and not run. It's the willingness to say, "I'm not okay," and to allow others to step in. It's the courage to be seen, fully seen, without shame. It's learning how to feel without being controlled, how to hurt without being destroyed, how to be vulnerable without losing your identity. But the myth doesn't just live out there, it lives in us. We've internalized it. We repeat it to ourselves like a script. Don't cry, don't be soft, don't let them see you break. We say it without thinking. We've been conditioned to believe that emotions are liabilities, that sensitivity is weakness, that strength looks like self-reliance. And so we keep pushing through. We numb ourselves with busyness, with substances, with distractions, anything to avoid feeling what's really going on underneath. But the truth always finds its way out. You can suppress it, you can deny it, but it'll manifest. Maybe as anger, maybe as fatigue, maybe as disconnection from everyone you love. Emotional wounds don't just disappear, they fester when ignored. The myth of strength is seductive because it gives the illusion of control. If I don't feel it, it won't hurt me. If I don't talk about it, it's not real. If I act strong, I'll become strong. But strength doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from endurance, from facing what's real and walking through it anyway, not alone, but honestly, and that's something the myth doesn't prepare you for. It doesn't teach you how to process grief. It doesn't show you how to sit in sorrow without shame. It doesn't tell you that healing is messy, that tears are sacred, that reaching out is not weakness but wisdom. So many of us have been emotionally stunted by this myth. We've built walls where we should have built bridges. We've chosen image over integrity, and the longer we cling to this false strength, the more we rob ourselves of true emotional maturity, because real strength doesn't deny emotion. It disciplines it, it listens to it, learns from it, and integrates it. Real strength is humble enough to say, "I need help," and wise enough to receive it. You see, when we believe the myth, we isolate ourselves. We create a version of ourselves that we think the world wants, and we wear it like a costume, but deep down, we feel the gap between who we are and who we pretend to be. That gap becomes a source of shame. And shame feeds silence, and silence feeds suffering. That's why so many people look fine on the outside, but feel hollow inside, because they're living a life disconnected from their emotional reality. The myth has cost us dearly. It has robbed us of connection, of authenticity, of the healing that only comes through honesty. It has turned vulnerability into something we fear instead of something we embrace. It has made us emotionally fragile under the surface, no matter how tough we look on the outside, and yet most people still cling to it because to let go of the myth feels like letting go of control. Like opening the floodgates and being swept away. But what if letting go is the first act of strength? What if the real power is not in hiding, but in healing? What if the strongest thing you could do is stop pretending you don't feel anything at all? Pain is not an interruption in life. It is life. That might sound bleak to someone who's been taught to chase happiness at all costs, who's been told that the goal of life is to be comfortable, to be unbothered, to keep smiling no matter what. But the truth is, pain is not the enemy. It's not the sign that something has gone terribly wrong. It's the sign that you're alive, breathing, human, and if you try to build a life that avoids pain entirely, you're not building a life, you're building a fantasy. One that will collapse the moment the real world steps through your door. We've been sold this idea that pain is an exception, that it's something we only face when we've failed. That if we do everything right, if we make good choices, surround ourselves with good people, eat healthy, pray hard, work smart, keep our heads down and our hearts guarded, we'll somehow be spared. But that's not how this works. Pain doesn't check your credentials. It doesn't care how good your intentions are. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It just comes, sometimes like a slow drizzle that turns into a flood, sometimes like a lightning bolt in the middle of a clear blue sky. And when it comes, it strips you bare. It shows you what's real and what was only ever a distraction. It reveals who you are, what you believe, what you've built your foundation on. Pain has a way of exposing everything, your fears, your attachments, your illusions. And most people spend their lives trying to outrun it. They try to distract themselves from it. They numb it with alcohol, with entertainment, with busyness, with religion that avoids the heart, with relationships that never touch the soul. They pretend it's not there, or worse, they pretend they're above it, but no one escapes, not the strong, not the wise, not the righteous. Pain comes for all of us. It comes through loss, betrayal, disappointment, sickness, anxiety, loneliness, failure, depression, death. And sometimes it comes from within. An ache you can't name, a void you can't fill, a weight you can't lift. And here's the thing, you can ignore it for a while. You can bury it under routines and responsibilities and nice words. But sooner or later it catches up with you, because pain doesn't go away when you ignore it. It grows, it spreads, it waits for silence. You need to understand this. Pain isn't punishment. It's not always a result of something you've done wrong. Sometimes it's just the evidence that you live in a world that's broken, a world that isn't as it should be, a world full of injustice and fragility and things that die too soon. And in a world like this, pain is inevitable. To love is to lose, to hope is to risk disappointment, to care is to open yourself up to hurt. That's not weakness, that's the cost of being human. The danger isn't the pain itself. The danger is believing that you're not supposed to feel it. That somehow your pain disqualifies you from strength or purpose or peace. That's the real trap, because once you believe that, you'll start hiding, you'll wear a mask, you'll stop telling the truth. You'll smile when you should cry, you'll say I'm fine when your soul is bleeding, and over time that pretending hardens your heart. It makes you cold, detached, unable to feel, not just the sorrow, but even the joy. You can't selectively numb emotions. When you shut down one, you start to lose them all. Pain has a purpose. It doesn't feel like it in the moment. When you're in the thick of it, all you want is for it to end. You don't want lessons. You don't want growth. You want relief. but sometimes pain is the only thing strong enough to break the lies you've believed your whole life. Sometimes it's the only thing that will bring you face with the things you've been avoiding. It humbles you, it slows you down, it reminds you that you're not in control, that your strength has limits, that your heart still feels. There's something sacred about suffering, not in a romanticized way, but in the sense that it peels away everything superficial. It leaves you raw, exposed, real. It makes you cry out from the deepest places of your soul, and in that cry you hear things you never heard before. You see life differently, people differently, yourself differently. Pain has a strange way of opening your eyes to what matters, to what lasts, and if you let it, it will change you, not into someone colder, but into someone deeper. The problem is, most of us are in such a hurry to escape pain that we miss what it's trying to teach us. We treat it like a disease instead of a doorway, but healing doesn't happen without first sitting in the discomfort, without first letting it come all the way to the surface. That takes courage. Not the kind of courage that charges into battle, but the quiet, stubborn kind, the kind that chooses to stay when everything in you wants to run, the kind that says, I'm not going to numb this, I'm going to feel it, I'm going to face it, I'm going to let it change me. You don't need to be ashamed of your pain. You don't need to hide it or apologize for it. You don't need to pretend it's not affecting you. It's okay to be broken. It's okay to not have it all together. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you honest, and honesty is where healing begins. Not healing that rushes you past the grief, but healing that meets you in it, that walks with you through the dark without trying to fix you. That kind of healing only comes when you stop resisting pain and start listening to it. There is no shortcut through this. There's no fast forward button on grief, no life hack for sorrow. You have to walk through it. You have to let it do its work, and it will hurt. It will take longer than you want it to, but you'll come out the other side not just having survived, but having been transformed, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. There's a kind of crisis that doesn't announce itself with sirens. It doesn't show up with flames or explosions. It comes quietly, slowly. It builds beneath the surface of your everyday life. And before you even realize it's there, it starts shaping the way you think, the way you speak, the way you relate to people, the way you see yourself. This is not a crisis of your job, or your finances, or your health. It's deeper than that. It's a crisis within, a fracture in the soul, a confusion of identity, a silent war that rages behind your eyes and behind your smile. You can't always see it from the outside. People don't talk about it in small talk or post it on social media. You can be surrounded by friends, admired for your talents, complimented for your achievements, and still feel hollow inside. You can check all the boxes: success, relationships, stability, and yet still lie in bed at night staring at the ceiling, wondering why you feel like you're unraveling. That's the kind of crisis I'm talking about, the kind that makes you feel like a stranger to yourself. And here's the truth: most people are walking through life with this crisis hidden just beneath the surface. They function, they perform, they carry on, but something inside is off. There's a tension they can't name, a weight they can't shake, a question that haunts them no matter how much they try to distract themselves. Who am I, really? Why do I feel so fragile, so unstable, so easily shaken? Why do the same wounds keep showing up in different relationships, different seasons, different forms? We've been taught to treat emotional weakness like a glitch in the system, like something we can fix with a podcast or a productivity hack. But the real issue runs deeper than that. It's not just about managing emotions, it's about the foundation beneath them. You see, everyone's building their life on something. Some build it on the approval of others, some on performance, some on comfort or image or control. But here's the thing: every false foundation eventually cracks. Because none of those things can hold the weight of your identity, none of them can bear the full pressure of your humanity. They're not strong enough, and when the pressure comes, when life gets heavy, when relationships fail, when the future becomes uncertain, those cracks begin to show. You begin to feel lost, anxious, unanchored. not because the pain is new, but because the crisis within has finally risen to the surface. You start to see that you've been measuring your worth by things that are fading. You've been building your value on things that can't last. And no matter how much you achieve, no matter how many people admire you, you can't quiet that inner voice that says, "It's not enough. You're not enough." This crisis doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just whispers. It whispers in the shame you carry for mistakes you can't undo. It whispers in the fear of being truly known. It whispers in the exhaustion of pretending to be okay when you're not. And it grows louder in the silence, when the noise of life dies down, when the day is done and there's nothing left to distract you. That voice begins to speak clearly, and what it says hurts, because deep down, you know there are parts of you you've never faced. Wounds you've never acknowledged, lies you've believed for so long they've become part of your identity, and when your soul is fractured like that, when you're living in pieces pretending to be whole, it's not sustainable. Eventually, the cracks will break open, and here's where the real danger lies. We've become experts at avoiding this crisis. We've mastered the art of distraction. We stay busy. We stay entertained. We convince ourselves that if we just work a little harder, look a little better, accomplish a little more, we'll finally feel okay. But deep down, we're terrified of stopping, because if we stop, we might have to feel. And if we feel, we might have to face things we don't want to face, things we've buried for years, things we've told ourselves we were over, things we've never even named, and the longer we avoid it, the deeper the crisis goes. It begins to shape our relationships. We become reactive, defensive, emotionally distant. We sabotage intimacy because we don't know how to be vulnerable without feeling exposed. We hurt the people closest to us and then beat ourselves up for it afterward. We carry guilt and shame like armor, thinking it protects us when it's really just isolating us further. There is a sickness in the soul that no amount of success can cure. There is a hunger that applause can't satisfy. And that's what this crisis is. A hunger to be whole, a longing to be rooted in something real, something unshakable, something that tells you who you are even when everything else falls apart. But you can't heal what you won't confront. And most people are terrified of confrontation, not with others, but with themselves. They don't want to ask the hard questions. They don't want to sit in silence long enough to hear what their heart is really saying. Because what if it's too painful? What if it's too messy? What if they don't like what they find? But the truth is, that pain you're afraid to face, that's the doorway to freedom. That mess you've been hiding, that's where the healing begins. Because the crisis within isn't there to destroy you. It's there to wake you up, to show you that something deeper is needed. That the life you've built can't support the weight of your soul until you anchor it in something more real than applause, more lasting than performance, more honest than image. You can keep running, keep pretending, keep numbing, but the crisis will follow you because it's not outside of you. It's inside, and until you stop and face it, nothing will ever feel secure, not your relationships, not your achievements, not even your peace, because peace isn't found in the absence of struggle, it's found in the presence of truth, and the truth is, you've been carrying a weight your soul was never meant to bear. You've been living fragmented, pretending to be whole. And you're tired, not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, deeply. So now the question becomes, are you willing to stop? Are you willing to look in the mirror and confront what you see, not with shame, not with judgment, but with honesty, with courage, because the crisis within will not heal with time alone. It heals when the truth is welcomed, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. It heals when you choose to be real, when you choose to stop running, when you finally stop pretending that being put together on the outside is more important than being honest on the inside. There comes a moment in every person's life when the noise fades just enough to hear something deeper, a call not out loud but inward. It doesn't beg for your attention with bright lights or dramatic signs. It doesn't flatter you or distract you. It confronts you quietly, firmly. It pulls you to stop, to sit, to reflect, not on the world out there, but on the world inside. This is the call to sober reflection, and it's not easy to answer because it demands that you stop pretending, stop performing, and start telling the truth. We live in an age that runs from reflection. Everything around us pushes us to keep moving, to stay entertained, to avoid stillness at all costs. There's a screen in every hand, a distraction at every turn. We fill our days with tasks and our nights with noise. We've grown addicted to the kind of life that never lets us slow down enough to face what's really going on. And the tragedy is, we've come to mistake activity for clarity, busyness for progress, noise for truth. But truth doesn't shout over distractions. It waits in the quiet, and that's what makes sober reflection so uncomfortable, because it requires quiet. It requires you to pull away from the motion of the world and step into the stillness of your own soul. That's where the real questions live, the kind that pierce through appearances, the kind that expose what's been ignored. Who are you really? What are you running from? What are you chasing? What do you fear? What have you built your life upon? These aren't questions for a casual scroll through your thoughts. These are questions that demand a pause, a wrestle, a willingness to listen for answers you might not like. You can't reflect soberly if you're obsessed with appearances. You can't be honest with yourself if you're more interested in how others see you than how you actually are. That's one of the hardest truths about this call. It exposes your attachments. It shows you how easily you settle for shallow validation instead of deep transformation. It reveals the ways you've been playing a role instead of living a life. We've all done it, crafted an image, played to the expectations, said the right things, smiled at the right times. But behind that image is a person who needs to be known, not just by others, but by themselves. Because here's the danger: if you don't stop and reflect, you can live your whole life asleep. You can succeed at things that don't matter. You can build a life that looks impressive on the outside, but feels hollow on the inside. You can be admired and still be lost. You can be surrounded and still be lonely, and you'll never know why, because you never stopped long enough to ask. That's what sober reflection does. It slows you down so you can see what's really going on, not just around you, but within you. But most people avoid this, not because they don't want to grow, but because they don't want to feel. Reflection brings things up. It stirs the waters. It reveals pain, regret, insecurity, pride. It uncovers wounds you thought were healed, patterns you thought were broken, lies you didn't know you still believed. And once you see those things, you can't unsee them. Once you're aware, you're responsible, and responsibility means change. It means letting go of what's easy. It means facing what's hard, and we'd rather stay comfortable than get honest. But the cost of ignoring this call is too high, because when you don't reflect, you repeat. You carry the same hurt into every new relationship. You make the same choices with different consequences. You live by instinct instead of intention, and the saddest part is, you call it fate or bad luck or just the way life is, when in reality, it's just the result of refusing to look in the mirror. This isn't about self-condemnation. It's not about sitting in shame or obsessing over your flaws. Sober reflection is about clarity. It's about alignment. It's about stripping away the noise so you can hear the truth, not just about what's broken, but about what's possible. Because when you're honest about where you are, you can begin to walk toward where you need to be. You can begin to rebuild, not from pressure, not from guilt, but from truth. And that truth is often uncomfortable. It cuts through the excuses and the distractions. It shows you that maybe you've been blaming others for things you were responsible for, or maybe you've been holding guilt for things that were never your fault. Maybe you've been numbing pain instead of processing it, or maybe you've been hiding behind strength because you're terrified of being seen as weak. Whatever it is, reflection surfaces it, not to shame you, but to free you. Because you can't heal what you won't face. You can't change what you won't acknowledge, and it's not a one-time thing. Sober reflection isn't a moment. It's a practice, a habit of the heart, a discipline that says, I will not let life pass me by while I'm sleepwalking through it. It's about checking in with your soul before the world tells you what to think, what to feel, who to be. It's about creating space to hear what matters most, beneath the roles, beneath the noise, beneath the expectations. You don't need a mountaintop to do this. You don't need a retreat or a perfect morning routine. What you need is the willingness to stop, to be still, to ask the hard questions and wait for the real answers. That might mean turning off the phone. That might mean walking away from the crowd. That might mean facing a silence you've avoided for years. But it's in that silence that clarity begins to form. That's where the fog starts to lift. There is a kind of strength that only comes through reflection, not the strength to impress, but the strength to endure, the strength to change, the strength to know who you are, not because someone told you, but because you look deep enough to see it for yourself. That kind of strength doesn't come quickly. It comes through the quiet work of truth, through asking, listening, adjusting, through humbling yourself before your own heart and saying, I need to know what's really going on. We all come to this crossroads at some point. Maybe you're at it now, maybe the noise isn't working anymore, maybe the distraction has lost its power, maybe you're tired of pretending. That's not failure. That's the beginning of something real. That's the moment the call to sober reflection finds you. And when it does, don't run from it, don't drown it out, lean into it, sit with it, let it speak, because the truth, even when it hurts, is the only thing that can truly set you free. There's something in the human heart that refuses to give up entirely, even in the darkest moments. You can be broken, weary, ashamed, tired of trying and failing, and yet somewhere deep down a whisper remains, a faint echo that says maybe things can still change. That's not weakness, that's not denial. That's hope, and real hope, the kind that breathes through suffering and stands through storms, is not a naive optimism. It's the lifeline that keeps a soul alive when everything else says it's over. You don't have to look far to see people who have given up. Not always in words, but in their eyes, in the way they walk, in the way they speak. You see it in the way they shrink from love, avoid silence, bury themselves in work or distraction. They might still laugh. They might still function, but somewhere along the line, they stopped believing that change was possible for them. Life knocked them down one too many times, and eventually they stopped getting back up. They accepted the pain as permanent, the emptiness as normal, the lie that says, this is just who I am, nothing will ever change. But that's not the truth. The truth is that transformation is real. Not the surface-level kind that fades in a few weeks, not the emotional high that dies as soon as life gets hard again. I'm talking about a deep, lasting, soul-level transformation, the kind that turns ashes into beauty. The kind that makes you look back and say, I'm not who I used to be. That kind of change doesn't come from pretending. It doesn't come from performing. It comes from facing the broken parts of yourself with honesty and daring to believe that grace still reaches that far. Most people want transformation without the process. They want the fruit without the root. They want the freedom without the fight. But the truth is, transformation is not painless. It's not easy. It costs something. It costs your pride. It costs your excuses. It costs your illusions of control. And most of all, it costs your comfort. Because to be transformed, you have to walk through the fire of change. You have to let go of old stories, old habits, old identities. And that's terrifying because we cling to what's familiar, even if it's killing us. You'll never be transformed until you stop settling for survival. You'll never rise if you keep choosing what's safe over what's true. And the truth is, the version of you that you've built to cope, the one that avoids, performs, controls, pleases, that version isn't the real you. It's the you that got shaped by pain, by fear, by rejection. And as long as you keep identifying with it, you'll stay stuck. You'll keep repeating the same cycles, having the same breakdowns, feeling the same emptiness no matter how much you achieve, because deep down you know something's missing. Something vital, something honest. But here's the good news. Transformation doesn't begin with having it all together. It begins with surrender. It begins when you get tired enough of pretending, when you stop fighting for your limitations. When you stop saying, this is just the way I am, and start saying, maybe there's more. That's when things begin to shift. That's when healing begins to seep in. Not in loud, dramatic ways, but in the quiet spaces where your soul begins to unclench, where the mask starts to slip, where the truth starts to feel safer than the lie. The hope of transformation is not that you'll become perfect. It's that you'll become real, whole, free. It's not about changing so people will accept you. It's about becoming who you were meant to be all along. And the most beautiful thing about real transformation is that it doesn't erase your pain, it redeems it. It doesn't deny your weakness, it uses it. The parts of you that were once the most broken become the places where grace shines the brightest. The scars become signs of survival. The shame becomes a testimony. And the areas where you used to feel hopeless become holy ground for others to find healing too. There's a reason your soul longs for more. There's a reason you've always felt this tension, this ache, this hunger for something deeper. It's because you were never made to settle. You weren't made to numb yourself through life. You weren't made to live in fear or bondage or self-hatred. You were made for truth, for freedom, for wholeness. For love that is stronger than failure and more constant than your mood. And somewhere deep down, you already know that. That's why you're still here. That's why you're still searching. Because something inside you knows there is more to this life and more to you. But don't mistake transformation for a sudden miracle. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it looks like falling apart before it looks like being put back together. Sometimes it means unlearning years of lies and patterns and defenses. It's not always beautiful at first. It's messy, it's hard, it's frustrating, but it's real, and anything real is worth the fight. There will be days when you doubt it, when you feel like nothing's changing. When you look in the mirror and still see the same struggles, don't let those days define your journey. Progress isn't always visible. Sometimes the most powerful transformation is happening underneath the surface, in the places no one else can see. Keep going, keep trusting, keep showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because every moment you choose truth over fear, healing over hiding, love over shame, you are being transformed. Not into someone else, but into your truest self, the one who can stand in the storm and not be moved, the one who can look at the past and not be owned by it, the one who can offer love without fear, leave without a mask, speak without performing. That person is already inside of you. You're not trying to become someone new. You're shedding everything that was never really you. So when the darkness whispers that nothing will ever change, you whisper back, watch me. When the voice of shame says you're too far gone, you answer, grace goes further. And when the weight feels too heavy when you want to quit, remember this transformation is not about your strength. It's about your surrender. You're not holding yourself together. You're being held, and the hands that hold you are strong enough to finish what they started.